Hello, history detectives. Have you ever wondered how the place we call Britain came to be? It's a story that stretches back thousands and thousands of years, long before kings and queens and even before the written word. To understand the Britain of today, we need to hop into our imaginary time machine and travel all the way back to the Stone Age. This was a time when the land was wilder, colder, and connected by land to the rest of Europe. The very first people to live here were brave hunter-gatherers, following herds of giant animals like woolly mammoths deer across a vast and untamed landscape. These early Britons were incredibly resourceful. They had to be. They couldn't just pop to the shops for their dinner. Instead, they crafted clever tools from flint, a type of hard stone they could chip into sharp points for spears, blades for cutting. As the climate warmed and the great ice sheets retreated, something remarkable happened. People began to change their way of life. This was the dawn of the Neolithic period. Instead of just hunting, people learned how to farm. They cleared forests to plant the first crops like wheat, barley, and they began to keep animals like sheep, cattle. This was a huge revolution. For the first time, people could stay in one place. And with these new settled communities came the time to create truly astonishing things. The most famous of these is, of course, Stonehenge. Just imagine it, these Stone Age people, using nothing more than ropes, logs and sheer muscle power, managed to drag enormous stones from over 150 miles away in Wales and hoist massive sarsen stones into place. We don't know for certain why they built it. Was it a temple for sun worship, a giant calendar, or a burial ground for important people? Whatever its purpose, Stonehenge proves that these early Britons were organized, clever and capable of creating something truly magical that still captivates us today. For thousands of years, Britain was a land of different tribes, but then a new and powerful force arrived. In the year 43 AD, the Romans sailed across the Channel, Roman soldiers landing, shiny armor, organized legions, incredible engineering skills. The local Celtic tribes, like the Iceni, fought back bravely. Queen Boudica led fierce resistance, but they were no match for the Roman army. The Romans were here to stay, bringing a very different way of life. Master builders, long, straight roads that still shape our highways today. They built grand public buildings, bathhouses, forums, amphitheatres, cities. Londinium, Eboracum, Aquae Sulis became bustling centres. They introduced new laws. Latin new gods, central heating. For nearly 400 years, Britain was part of the Roman Empire, Pax Romana. By the early 5th century, the legions were called back home. Into this gap came new waves from the North Sea. Angles, Saxons, Jutes. These tribes were warriors, these tribes were farmers. They established small kingdoms, Anglo-Saxon England. A new threat appeared on the horizon. The Vikings. The sack of Lindisfarne, 793, they later settled in north and east England. Place names ending in by, for example, Whitby. Place names ending in Thorpe, for example, Scunthorpe. This dark age was a melting pot. Romans, Celts, Anglo-Saxons, Vikings, all contributing to the mix that would become Britain. The year 1066 is perhaps the most famous date in all of British history. It was the year of a great and bloody battle that would change the course of the nation forever. The King of England, Edward the Confessor, died without an heir, leading to a power struggle. An English earl named Harold Godwinson was crowned king, but two other men believed the throne was theirs, Harold Hardrada and William, the Duke of Normandy. After defeating the Norwegian invasion in the north, King Harold marched his exhausted armies south to face William at the Battle of Hastings. It was a close-fought battle. Harold was killed, and William the Conqueror became the new King of England. The Norman conquest was not just a change of king, it was a complete transformation of English society. William and his French-speaking nobles took control of all the land, replacing the old Anglo-Saxon aristocracy. French became the language of the court, French became the language of law, French became the language of power, while the common people continued to speak English. To secure his new kingdom, William embarked on a massive castle-building program. These formidable stone fortresses, like the Tower of London, were built all over the country. They were powerful symbols of Norman domination, a constant and imposing reminder of who was now in charge. The medieval period that followed was an age of knights in shining armor, chivalry, and constant jostling for power. Kings like Richard the Lionheart went on crusades to the Holy Land, but back at home his brother John was so unpopular he was forced by his barons to sign the Magna Carta in 1215. This great charter was a revolutionary document. For the first time, it established the principle that everyone, including the king, was subject to the law. It was a crucial first step toward democracy and individual rights, a cornerstone of British law still celebrated worldwide. This era also saw a dramatic change in the religious landscape. Grand cathedrals, Canterbury and York, soared towards the heavens, magnificent testaments to the power of the Christian faith. But this unity was shattered when King Henry VIII broke away from Rome to create the Church of England. After the drama of the Tudors and the civil war that followed, Britain began to look outwards. The 18th and 19th centuries were an age of incredible change, a time when this small island nation transformed itself into the center of a global empire. It all started with a revolution, not of swords and battles, but of machines and factories. This was the Industrial Revolution. Inventors and engineers created amazing new machines powered by steam. These innovations completely changed how things were made, moving production out of small cottages and into huge, noisy factories. This revolution created immense wealth for some, but also dramatically changed how and where people lived. Huge numbers moved from countryside to rapidly growing towns to work in the factories' mills. Manchester, Liverpool, Glasgow swelled in size, but living conditions for the working classes were often dreadful. People were crammed into poorly built houses and worked incredibly long hours for very little pay. While Britain was becoming an industrial powerhouse at home, it was also building a vast empire overseas. The powerful Royal Navy ruled the waves, allowing British traders, soldiers and settlers to travel to every corner of the globe. By the time of Queen Victoria's reign, the British Empire was the largest the world had ever seen, famously described as the empire on which the sun never sets. It included huge territories like India, Canada, Australia, as well as many parts of Africa and the Caribbean. This empire brought enormous wealth and resources to Britain, but it was often built on conquest and the exploitation of other peoples. The Victorian era, named after the long-reigning Queen Victoria, is often seen as the peak of Britain's power. It was a time of great confidence, strict social codes and remarkable scientific discoveries by figures like Charles Darwin. The country was connected by a web of new railways, great feats of engineering like Isambard Kingdom, Brunel's bridges spanned rivers, and British goods were sold all over the world. However, this period of apparent stability was also laying the groundwork for future conflicts, as rivalries with other European powers grew and the seeds of a new, more dangerous century were sown. The 20th century arrived with a bang, shattering the confidence of the Victorian and Edwardian ages. The First World War, from 1914 to 1918, was a brutal and devastating conflict. A whole generation of young men was lost in the muddy trenches. Just 2 decades later, the world was plunged into conflict again. Britain, led by the defiant Winston Churchill, stood against the tyranny of Nazi Germany. The home front suffered terribly during the Blitz, but the nation pulled together with incredible spirit to emerge victorious in 1945. After the Second World War, Britain was exhausted and nearly bankrupt. The country faced the enormous task of rebuilding, and this led to huge social changes. The most important of these was the creation of the National Health Service in 1948, a revolutionary idea that provided free healthcare for everyone. At the same time, the age of empire was coming to an end. One by one, countries across the globe demanded and won their independence, and the British Empire transformed into the Commonwealth. The second half of the 20th century saw Britain become much more diverse. People from former colonies were invited to help rebuild, particularly the Caribbean, India, Pakistan. They brought with them cultures, foods, traditions, enriching British life and changing towns and cities forever. The swinging 60s exploded in music, fashion, art. British bands like the Beatles conquered the world. Britain was finding a new identity, no longer a global superpower, but a creative and vibrant hub of innovation. Today, Britain is shaped by every layer of its history. Roman roads, Norman castles, the language of the Anglo-Saxons, industrial cities, the multicultural fabric of modern life. All visible reminders of the island's journey. From the mysterious builders of Stonehenge to the diverse citizens of the 21st century, the story of Britain is one of change, invasion, invention, adaptation. By understanding this past, we can better understand Britain today. It's a story that is still being written every single day.